Yeah, so to really understand how the process is going um, is to really come back to who and what we are at first, like in theory, okay, and then of course it also happens in the process. And what do I mean by that is being the awareness of words, pictures, sensations, energies arising, and being you and having the experience of vipassana. You should know that, right? So there is that which is aware of everything coming and going, and depends. So if this awareness, if we can observe from the observer standpoint, and even the sensations, as you were saying in your experience, the sensations of pain, if they're not given the meaning of and the story upon those sensations, they can just stay as sensations coming and going, meaning not necessarily affecting one as the victim of pain, right? So it's kind of the same principle here. So it's really coming back to the observer standpoint and excavating the limiting, not limiting beliefs. All beliefs are limiting, whether good or bad. But excavating the unconscious beliefs that are still somatically. So it's also, apart from, it's a mindfulness practice, a practice method, but it's also a somatic memory cleansing. So there's all these shocks and stories and kind of like this confusion as a child that we went through registers in our body, as opposed to we think it's just the mind memory, but no, it's body-mind connection. So even logically, sometimes we feel like, oh, I'm over it. I forgive whoever created, this trauma for me. And we think we're over it, but the body says something else. And what happens, so we go through life, and what happens, the body gets the similar situation will trigger the memory in the body, and similar belief will arise unconsciously in the mind that, we believed about ourselves in that moment. So this body-mind connection, hello?
Yes, I'm following.
Yeah. So it's this body-mind connection that we come back to in KI. And not just body-mind connection, but also in the process, realizing that we're just the observer of body-mind reacting as words, pictures, or sensations, or emotions, or energy. So in the process, how it really happens is, of course, it's to understand and see the connection of the day-to-day trigger to tracing back to the origin of, so the day-to-day trigger will point out a certain deficiency story within ourselves, unconscious. It's unconsciously just running there. It's like a foundation. It's basically some sort of a deficiency that we started to believe about ourselves when we were small. Like, I'm not good enough, whatever. I'm not perfect enough. I'm not lovable enough, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, so first is like finding the trigger, and then finding the what's really unconsciously going on. Okay, it's not about them, and it's not about the situation, and it's not out there at all. It's actually something, what I'm feeling within myself unconsciously. I'm not aware of it, but it's something that is triggered here that feels like I'm suffering because of them. But I'm suffering because of it just gets inflamed again in my body as sensations, and that generate obviously thoughts. And it's like starting to recreate the same story all over again. So it's this tracing the trigger to the origin. And what happens when we do that, it's really, and it's not like the origin, it's not like a therapy where we have to talk a lot about what happened. What happened arises as unconscious thoughts come into words, and pictures through different questions, because it's method of inquiry. We inquire, we ask questions. So we ask questions, and the energies in the body hold a lot of memory. So they actually can speak and talk and say and show things. So in this process of liberation of these energies or these memories, first and foremost into the conscious awareness, because when they're unconscious, we don't see them. Even awareness, which is aware of everything, it doesn't see them. So when they brought up to conscious awareness, we become aware of them. And the process of liberation, what really happens is the same thing like in Vipassana, like you were talking about pain and withdrawing that meaning out of pain and let it be just the direct experience that happens. So in the process, we start seeing that I'm not a picture, I'm not a word, I'm not a sensation even, and not giving that so much meaning as before it had so much meaning, it had the whole story about me. And when we start seeing it, that it's just words, pictures and sensations arising, falling and arising within awareness, then things start to relax. And the energy starts emptying, meaning like this initial shock starts emptying of the story. And when it empties of the story, it can relax back into nothing. But the process is the one thing that I want to mention, and I think it might be even the last thing I mentioned about that. When we trace from the trigger of today to the original story, when we trace that, sometimes, most of the time, we're going to evoke this, sorry, my computer's dying. We're going to evoke or re-trigger this vulnerable energy of the child and how it was back then, how it felt, how it was dealing with the situation, what it was thinking about everything, what it was thinking about itself. So first, we need to give what was not given. And what was not given in our childhood is acknowledgement, love, seeing, I see you, attention, perhaps a listening ear, a hug, whatever it is, presence, just acknowledging presence. So when this energy that was in this shock within ourselves, it's just an energy, it's not the, how there's all these practices of the inner child and everything. It's not exactly that. It's just an energy. It's like a memory that is still looking for that attention or to be understood or to be heard. So when this energy is evoked and then it's given whatever it needs to be given from just presence, okay, I see you, I feel you, like whatever you went through, I acknowledge. So when that is given, that attention and that need is fulfilled, then it can actually relax. And then from that perspective, instead of being fully compassionately there is this compassionate presence, then we take step back and okay, these are just words, these are just pictures, and these are just still beliefs or words or concepts that I'm giving so much meaning and identifying with. So it's like a three-step process, tracing the trigger to the origin, allowing the origin to be fulfilled with what was missing, and then taking a step back and seeing, oh, it is an illusion. It's not actually real. What's really happening? And start seeing ourselves as the freedom in which things come and go. So this kind of ish, the process that allows things to fully relax. And any questions about any of that?
Makes sense. I want to try it. I want to put it in practice. The first challenge, I guess, it's to find specific events from my childhood, and I guess it's according to whatever we are looking for.
Yeah, it usually arises spontaneously from certain questions that I facilitate with. And it's not necessarily just one event. Sometimes it's going back to different events, because one, it could be an origin, and then it could be, events that were reinforcing it, and kind of building that story as more a concrete belief. But look, there is evidence. Look, there is evidence. Look, there is evidence. But all this evidence coming back again, Vipassana, coming back to what's real, it's just actually words and pictures. Even the evidence, it's not happening anymore. It's not real in reality of right here, right now, this present moment. The only reality it has is it as words, pictures, and sensations arising within us. Because the mind wants to create a timeline, but when we come back to what's real, and that's the most important part to understand in this particular method, that the foundation is this present moment. The foundation is the awareness, the consciousness that is aware of things arising in direct experience.
Okay, here now. Okay.
So sometimes it would be, yes, we might go back, but this back is not back there. It's here and now. A picture or a word or a sensation in the body that is going to be happening. So it's like stepping out. It's really start even questioning the fact that is like, who am I really believing myself to be? Like, am I really just this word, me or I, really? Or it's just, or I the sufferer, or I the victim? Or I am not the sufferer, or I am not the victim, is the same. It's just words arising and falling, rising, disappearing. That's all. And the freedom is, the invitation, I speak about, okay, the invitation to freedom. And the invitation to freedom is not from this one story that I used to believe I am, or the lie about myself, or this limitation about myself that I believe. The freedom actually is in coming back and remembering who and what we are in the process. And only from there, knowing that we are the background to all of it, even the most intense sensations, right? Like, kind of, there's a point in Vipassana, you go there, you have no choice by sitting so long. It's like you just arrive to a point where, okay, there's just this happening. And there is this, the only constant is actually the awareness of it all. Everything else is coming and going. So as soon as we just grasp on to something that is coming and going and trying to identify as ourselves, it's just going to create suffering one way or another. But as long as we come back, that freedom I'm talking about, come back to the background, the observer, then from the observer standpoint, things will still be coming and going, but at least suffering is not happening because I'm not pushing anything away and I'm not grasping onto anything. So things are just in flux and moving, kind of in children. One moment they feel lots of anger, and the next moment lots of joy, and next moment lots of tears, and then a lot of laughter. And it's just like moving spontaneously through without being stuck. So it's not stopping being human, but it's like really being the space of the human full spectrum to move through and come and go spontaneously without being stuck.
Okay. So the dynamic is you making some questions and I responding to those questions and relate the images that comes to my head to some specific sensations in the body.
Yeah, that's a good point that I didn't mention. So the whole experience is quite of a somatic practice. So a lot of it is going to be not just memories in our head or words and pictures, but it's really going to be as much as possible body awareness and what's happening, because kind of like we did in diet, like, don't tell me about this event. Let the body, let the energy inside tell me and answer me this question that I'm giving you. So it's like, because it's one thing to have, you know, knowledge about something, and it's another thing our body's carrying certain I would say not even a blueprint, but conditioning, right, about something. So our bodies have much more to say there, our minds think, you know, about a certain situation. So let's say like a question, you know, like there's, we call it mining in KI. Okay, let me pick one. So anyway, maybe it's a contraction, or maybe it's something we're dealing with, like something, maybe even physical pain. So let's say with that, I can go and ask the question to ask that pain, you know, how long does this intend to stay? Like even like the issue like with my face right now, this would be also KI-able. Like I can do a KI on this and ask, you know, how long is this intends to stay? And really just listen. Listen, maybe a download of why it's really here might arise. And how long it intends to stay maybe is something like until, you know, I clear this, or until I heal that, or until I pay attention to this. It's quite magical what arises from just very, very simple questions, but they tap directly. Inquiry taps directly when we listen to our body. Inquiry taps directly to the unconscious stuff.
Okay.
So it's quite fascinating in that way. Okay, so let me see what we can do with the time we have. Yeah, I don't want to be rushed into a session because it feels like I'm going to be rushing a session, but I don't want to do that. So we'll have to book another time, and we could just take it easy and just if you have any questions, I will answer. And otherwise, yeah, I don't want to, because I would like to, like, real KI, a good session would be an hour and 20 minutes, and we don't have even an hour. So it's not good. Just going to be like looking at some stuff, stirring some stuff, and leaving you behind feeling not so good. I don't want to do that.
Right. Okay. Makes sense. Yeah, some questions from my side.
If anything, if you have anything on your mind, you know.
Yes. Could be this I mean, I think I need to live the experience to learn the technique.
Yeah. For sure.
I wonder if I should bring a specific issue I want to work with, or it is an open space, or pretty much anything can show up.
Yeah. Yeah, so it can go just kind of explaining KI, you know, since we're already filming this. Thanks. It's a good question. And it can go both ways. So if you know, we have one session, two sessions, I say, you know, let's go with what's happening to you right now. Like, what's your triggers in the past week? You know, what's your experiencing, what's your fears, what's your concerns, like what's your worries? And we're gonna go and make that a portal to go and see what is it in you that gets triggered or afraid or need different sabotaging energies and mechanisms of protection that are happening. But if we're working together for a good, I don't know, 10 sessions or more, Then what we would do, probably our first session, I would build a historical trigger inventory. And that goes into the past directly. I mean, by different questions I'm going to be answering and filling out the form. And it would go into, the event that happened. Okay, who, the person or the event, whatever happened in the childhood, like the most traumatic events, let's say. And then, what was the belief that originated then? What's the traits of the trigger when every time, I live my day-to-day life, but there are perhaps some traits about that person that was the origin of my trauma. Maybe they were unavailable. Okay, so the trait is unavailable. So every time in my adult life, I will meet with this energy or this trait of unavailable. It's going to be all the deficiency story, the belief I originated about this, about myself, and that is going to be triggered. It's going to be arising, or at least it's going to be somewhere in the background. So what we can do with that is filling out that form, at least 3. There is about, I would say, we all have about, I don't know, 4 or 5 themes playing out. So there are different events that happened that marked us as the conditioning that is psychologically kind of there. And this psychological event or this belief about ourselves, let's say in my case, it was, I'm not good enough, or I'm not perfect enough. So I was not intelligent enough for my mom, or not good enough. There was always, I needed to fix it. I needed to prove something. I needed, to a point where I was like dysfunctional, because it's like I had to do so much stuff before I could do something. So in this case, there's also not just the deficiency story, but we also see in this form also the utility behind it. And what I mean by utility is that, so it's like really seeing that every time we get this story inside us gets triggered unconsciously, it also looks for a payoff. It's actually unconsciously looking for a payoff. In my case, I needed to believe I'm not
It's looking for what?
a payoff.
For pay.
Like,
What do you mean?
a utility, like, right? It's like a tool. It's looking to do something. So what it's looking to do, in my case, the not good enough was looking for love and approval from my mom. So I had to believe I'm not good enough, so I can fix myself constantly, so I can be good enough, so I can get love and approval from my mom. So as soon as this I'm not good enough gets triggered by external situations, it also starts working hard on itself to get that unconscious love and attention or approval. So not until we see that every unconscious belief about ourselves also has a mechanism that it's looking for. And most of the time they're very ridiculous. Like, I have clients that needed to feel unsafe, or needed to believe that they're unsafe to actually feel safe. So it's like a dead loop that has to be completely annihilated, because it's a dysfunctional program. And it's never going to find what it's looking for, ever, not through the means of believing to be not perfect, or not good, or deficient, or not valued, or whatever. So, so yeah, it's like coming back to your question, like, if working with one person for a long time, yes, we're going to go to the core stuff for sure. We're going to first get the core stuff, the map of the core triggers or traumas that happen. Sometimes people don't have access to the most core things. And it might come up in sessions, because it's just, there's no access to it. The protections are so strong that it's not going to give us access by just filling out the form. And then if it's just like one session, then yeah, let's sit with what's just arising for you right now. Let's see, like, where's the stress? Where do you want to clear up that stress? And then if it's like a long-term working together, it means like, okay, let me address all the core beliefs, because if I address core beliefs, then it's just going to be, life will be just flowing much more effortlessly without the need to prove myself anymore or fix myself anymore.